Typical ka!
Hindi naman. Pag ganun mataas na level niya, may mga allies na kayo na deities, demigods, armies. Diba?
Divine intervention.
Those are the things that you try to discuss with you. Yeah, the projector space is where you want.
Alright, hey guys. Welcome to GM Seminar 2. Unfortunately, Mark will be late, so siguro mga 1 or 2 na siya makakating. Alright, so Fabs here.
PJ.
For first topic, this is our first thing. Using Filipino stuff in your games.
Okay, just a reminder, this is a panel discussion, so whenever you feel like you want to interrupt us, you're bastards. But you can.
You can ask anything.
Okay, joke lang yung bastard.
Donut ba?
Jokes are half-baked daw eh.
Depende kung ano.
So like,
Anak talaga kayo sa labas, wala na yung maganda. Si John Snow.
Hindi na namin kasalanan yun.
Okay, I guess we should start.
Let's introduce your games first. Your game is...
Okay, in the internet space, I am known as Nospicato. I so far have 2 published ebooks, one about Tikbalang and one about Aswang, both for 4th edition. Although the Tikbalang book has a Pathfinder version that you can download at RPG now, assuming you pay me. It's called the Buwan campaign setting. Although I'm trying to reconfigure with 5th ed, I might change things in a drastic way. But I have plans. We'll see.
Waiting for the license ang talaga.
Tapos kung walang license by mid of this year, I will have to reevaluate my choices.
Oh, also, let's talk about yung parang future paths ng games natin. We can talk about that. Kasi the topic of where do we go pag walang OGL is actually a nice topic.
Yeah, but I don't think it's covered.
Hindi, it's just daanan lang. Just make it quick. Right, so my game is Alamat ng Steve. And that game is it's an apocalypse world hack. So it's gonna be simple. D6 lang gamit. And it's not really a Filipino mytho game or...
It's Philippine setting.
It's a Philippine setting. It's
More
not
pop
urban
culture.
Philippines. It's a rural Philippine setting. So think probinsya setting. And yung village yung barrio nyo is frequently sacked by aswang sa limaws or whatever. Tapos yung Miss Barangay kinikidnap ng Tikbalang kasi maganda siya. Tapos isipin nyo, merong inter-barangay basketball league. Mga kalaban nyo, higante.
just like every day. Just like every day.
Yun, so just like every day.
There's an aswang terrorizing your town, pero liga na bukas pa.
Contemporary yan.
Tapos ano pa dun you also have to help yung tatak ng barangay captain. Yun. Diba? Yun. So, magra-rounds kayo sa mga sulok-sulok. So that's essentially the gist of my game is I want a Filipino flavor na anything in your head right now is in the game. A game that you can play without pre-reading anything na when you sit here, ano bang weakness ng aswang? Buntot pagi, it's in the game. So it's a game na if you're a Filipino or if you grew up with Filipino culture in your head, di mo na kailangan magbasa ng kahit ano, rules lang. And even the rules is simple enough. That's my game, Alamat ng Steve.
Alright, with that in mind, I guess we should start. Okay. Filipino elements in your pre-existing games. Filipino culture is largely an untapped source of inspiration for us. Even for... Hello, Toby.
Toby, Rocky.
Hey Toby, hey Rocky.
Even for most of our own games, there is not a what's the term? A prominence of Filipino elements. I suppose this is because I'm just speculating here, but I suppose this is because in our culture, Filipino elements are too familiar, but it's also rendered somewhat corny by pop culture. But the thing is, if you remove the corniness, if you focus on your pop culture and you look into the source material, it's actually a very rich source of material talaga.
And actually, yung pag-usapan namin yung ni Mira kanina is that Filipinos are like xenophiliac xenophobes. So we're on the extreme ends. So we have a gold mine of inspiration, pero we don't really tap it because we have the xenophilia sa hearts natin. And that's what we're trying to do here. Trying to fix that.
Okay, so Filipino culture is largely oral up to this day. A lot of people still believe in aswang. If you believe in them, more power.
Kaso ngayon, iba na meaning ng pang-aaswang eh.
Hey, don't look at me. Literal advancement especially for middle class Filipinos, it's more of a recent thing talaga. We advance on literalism, yung idea of visual, the things that you read, the things that you see, that's what you interpret as part of your culture. But back then, it's also, there's a lot of oral elements. There's also the tactile elements. Oh, tingnan mo nga yan, namatay si ganyan, tapos tingnan mo, butas yung ganyan.
And then the word gets passed around.
And then it morphs into ano. So I have a friend who in their hacienda had one of their servants shoot an aswang. He swears by it.
Hindi na ba baka asong may gangrene lang yun?
Hindi, nakita na nila yung bantay eh.
Okay.
Tapos naging tao daw eh. Pero aswang daw. So, yun nga, pop culture and people who have the capacity to look deeper into pop culture and find the interesting elements there have a tendency to disdain the mainstream siya for us. So we have a disconnect there.
Yeah, and then that's the thing with my game ng mga sayaw. Alamat ng istig is not only just a game. Kasi I want to poke fun sa pop culture ng Philippines. It's a multi-spanning game kasi you can play by generation like what you said kanina. So you can reenact, if you want to, yung old Filipino fantasy movies from the 80s and the 90s. Prominent examples is we will mention later. Pero yung feel ng fantasy movies yun, I want that feel kaso fueled with RPG adrenaline and yung satire na you're poking fun at the stuff that we grew up na pinagsasawa natin na corny na to us, admit it or not, it's seen in a negative sense na. And I'm not saying it's good, I'm not saying it's bad, I'm saying it's part of our history and culture, and I'm poking fun at it.
We love poking fun at our own culture, right? It's something we like to do with our politicians, each national. Anyway.
Politician. Why not?
Next slide.
Oh wait, yeah.
Okay na yan. Let's go straight to monsters. Okay, I guess this is my expertise because the two ebooks that I released both pertain to Filipino monsters. Okay, let me just look at my notes here. Monsters. Okay, there are 3 ways that you could use existing Filipino mythological or fantastical or political monsters in your game. The first one is, tell me if I should dial down the political stuff.
No, it's okay.
It's okay. Whatever you're comfy to have on YouTube.
Hindi naman problema ang political stuff sa Pilipinas.
It'll just be on YouTube.
Okay, it'll be on YouTube.
Forever. Yeah, BJ Retro on YouTube saying these things.
Okay, let's move on. There are three ways that you could do it. The first one is to reskin existing monsters. This is the easiest way to do it. A lot of our existing monsters have direct analogs to existing bestiaries. For example, you have a Dryad. Turn her into a dude. He's a Dalakitnon. Are you all familiar with Dalakitnon? Lives in a balete tree.
Tree spirits.
Tree spirits.
Dalakitnon, tahamanling, or mahumanay. Well, we have a horde.
Favorite ko yung Dalakitnon kasi they actually have cars. And
they're rich.
Blonde and they're rich. When you go inside their baleta tree, you actually notice that they have a mansion inside. So they're basically rich Americans.
Tapos they say, tapos bro, yung legend is when you wake up daw, if you sleep inside the house, when you wake up, nasa labas ka lang, wala kang damit.
Diba? Yun. Like, what happened?
Americans, just like every day.
But I suppose it's similar to Faye talaga. It's very similar. Don't eat their food. If you are familiar with one of Kamikaze's music videos, it's actually a trilogy. Starts with Halik, and then it goes to the second song that I don't remember, and then the last one is Huling Sayaw. If you look at the protagonist guy there, he's a total dalakit no. He lives in a baleta tree, he saves the girl, makes the girl eat food, girl falls in love with him, girl leaves the boyfriend, and then the dalakit non saves the girl, and then he gets hit by a metal object, and then he gets weak, and then they go to their house, and then they have fun, and then Huling Sayaw. It's very interesting. Another idea is, or another example rather, is you have an army of orcs. Your campaign setting has orcs in it, and then your orcs have a champion, and then the orc champion is a wereboar, turns into a pig. That's your typical British aswang. Or don't be a bad.
There's this Visayan monster, Gabay Ka. It's a human with a pig head. So you can put it. You can take the orc and say it's a Gabay Ka. What else do you have, man?
Go on, keep talking.
I mean, I'll go to mine kasi madali na talaga sa akin eh.
Nuts, I didn't bring it.
The monster in my game are the monsters that you feel are the monsters in society. So I'm gonna say this in front of the camera, pero one of the monsters in my BCR is Pisakino.
Yeah.
And Mommy Junusha. Yeah. So those two. I mean, of course, you have the standard aswang, tikbalang, and all those. Pero I'm putting ano rin kasi yung pop monsters. Because in times natin where we hate LRT, MRT, so I'm turning them into monsters too. Because again, we're poking fun at pop culture.
But
that's just my monsters.
Going back to myth, we also have a goblin kind of creature called the Anani, for example. He is a red creature about yay big, and he basically has a tendency to eat carabao heads.
Eat carabao.
Tendency
Yes.
only.
They're small and they're easily repelled, but the thing is, they can be a nuisance to your farmers. I mean, if you eat the carabao head, I'm pretty sure the carabao is dead.
That's how carabaos.
Well, at least you have the fun.
So all you have to do is you grab your generic goblin, turn him red, make him like carabao heads. That's your skinning already.
Essentially make it worse.
Mhm.
Make the goblin worse.
Okay, a second idea is to swipe something from existing source books, or swipe the monster itself and then add it wholesale. What am I talking about? Actually, in recent years, there's been a lot of Filipino monsters that have already been showing up in third-party products and in somewhat mainstream books. The most mainstream one I could think of right at the top of my head is Pathfinder. If you go to Pathfinder Bestiary tree, you have your Tikbalang and you have your Manananggal. Although they did release that after I released mine, so. Also, yeah.
I think I remember sa Shadowrun 3rd Ed. There's this, I'm not sure if it's a splat book or one of the main books, but I think Aswang and Manananggal were may kasama doon.
Pero
Yep.
if you want to dig, Penanggalan is just a variation of Manananggal. It's in the feeds folio.
Yeah, second.
Yeah, and also their Birbalang is a Visayan Mindanao monster, and it's also in
It's in 4th edition, Dungeon
no,
Monster Manual 1.
the older books.
Yeah,
in
it's
the older
even in the
books.
older books, but
Yung
it's
Birbalang. I forgot.
as recent as 4th edition. It's there.
Yeah.
Of course, Dungeon World has the Sigbin and the Bakunawa. And we have one changeling supplement that I've read has a Tikbalang as a goblin. A goblin in changeling terms. So I think Tobia is familiar with that particular source book. I don't remember the name. Okay.
There's also the Aswang
Ah, really?
in the antagonist's book.
Oh, cool. Okay, and then even third-party people. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Upper Crust. He is a small-time publisher of Immortals Handbook. Really epic level D&D play. His latest book was the Vampire Bestiary, and one of the vampires there is the Bone White, aka the Aswang. It's really. I'll share my notes with you on Facebook later on, so you can see the screenshot that I took. Hopefully, Upper Crust doesn't mind that I took a screenshot of the source book. Okay, but the problem with using that is that there's a lot of Western biases that are going to kick in. The tikbalang of Pathfinder, while you can see that they did do their research, and it's commendable that they did their research, there's still something missing, or not missing. They felt that there was something missing, and then they added their Western biases to it, which is okay. It's still a monster that is of Filipino origin, but it's their take on it. That's what I'm
I
saying.
mean, it happens all the time.
Mhm.
Artists, writers do that.
Yeah, I do that. A lot.
Cultural appropriation na ba yan?
Cultural appropriation, something deep sociological,
Yeah.
something. Okay, so you could swipe and add, or you could go on and make your own. Okay. What's the advantage of making your own? We have the books, we have the lore, we are familiar with it. If you have a UP ID, you could go to UP Library, you could look up Maximo Ramos. His thesis actually involved him moving around the country looking for verbal mythological creatures and cataloging them in his thesis. But you don't have to do that because Maximo Ramos' thesis has been there for a while now, and existing pieces of art, existing pieces of stories from Philippine speculative fiction, from other sources, and this is the one gem that you should look into. Children's books.
Yes.
Children's books. This one is the Aswang Inquiry. It has a lot of lore on the Aswang. This is where I got this is where I first read about the whole itim na sisiu. Are you familiar with that? They swallow it so that they can gain their Aswang powers.
They pass it on.
What?
I watched
Lola
it
didn't tell you that.
It's in the movie.
In the topic of children's books then, yeah, sabi ni BJ, it's the last frontiers of Filipino myth. I agree. And so I suggest if you want to add something sa games niya, and if you want it to be like genuine, Adarna Books has lots of, not really pre-Hispanic, pero ethnic Filipino myths. They have Aligrion, they have some lumad stories, and it's really nice. It also has pictures.
And it's illustrated by our local artists. So you're also supporting.
Yeah, that's not good. Or just Google will be your friend.
With the
Google
internet,
is your friend, Wikipedia is not. Okay?
if you are on the internet and you want to go as in hardcore na you're using thesis like we do, kasi right now thesis and researches and dissertations are the best way to get your real information. So you can check out Ateneo's online library. They have a list of epics. Mahirap basahin pero kasi it feels satisfying pag nabasa mo na, naintindihan ko yan, kinalabit niya yung kalaban. That's it. Pero ang hirap naintindihan. It's nice, and you also see yung real thing.
Okay, and the advantage of us doing it ourselves is that we understand the monster's place in the world. We understand the role that it plays in the Filipino psyche. So I wouldn't say, I hesitate to say more original than when our Western counterparts do it. And I will want to reiterate that when the Americans, when the English decide to write something about our myths, we really appreciate that because it's helping us spread the culture. But at the same time, there's just something when we are the ones who to do it.
Actually bro, napag-usapan natin online after some online debate on some pre-Hispanic lore stuff. BJ and I pag-usapan namin na what we're doing, we're researching on our culture. We're actually keeping our culture alive, diba?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Can I also add that one of the best resources that you have, well, from my experience from running several Filipino themed games, is your katulong sa bahay or helper.
Yeah.
Because
I agree.
we had several na iba-ibang province. And, yeah, so you can talk to them and verify if ever na may sisiw ba or bakit ba nila pinapatuka. Those the stories that you hear, di ba, when you go sa lamay pag na-murder daw or something, may sisiw daw. And you ask them, bakit ginagawa? Para makonsensya daw yung pumatay. So all these superstitions and beliefs, mas maganda if you really, iba-iba. Like from the Bicolanos of different ones, the Cebuanos of different ones, the people from Davao of different. So it's a good resource talaga to get it firsthand from
And it goes back to what I was saying earlier, that for the longest time we've been more oral, more tactile, more olfactory even. We're not really very visual because not a lot of people see aswang. I mean, if you have seen one,
And it's different from province to province.
it's differentiated
Yeah.
because of the way our archipelago works.
Right.
Then
Oh yeah.
it's
Islands.
similar
We
pero
skip
pero tayong ano.
No, we skip that. What we're doing in our games is we're taking inspiration from each interpretation of different tribes of different cultures. Because I mean, I guess everyone here knows na iba-iba ng culture in different islands, different places.
Different languages.
Yeah, and kasi I fear na we're crossing over the borders of cultural appropriation. Yung nawawala na yung meaning ng culture. I don't think so. Kasi what we're doing is we're just taking inspiration, diba?
Okay, but when you are the one to add your Filipino elements to your game, admittedly, some Western biases will still kick in because we are modern Filipinos and we're exposed to anime, we're exposed to
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings. Yeah. So, pwede talaga, it happens that the Western biases
Right.
will still seep through, and that's okay.
And not to
Don't
mention
feel bad about
the
it.
system, diba? Is Western.
Yeah, you have to fit it into the system. If the system has 4 seasons, for example, my real gripe with Change League. It's so stuck in its 4 seasons. But it's okay. It's not a big problem. And also, our pop culture has biases too. I have a picture here of Vice Ganda as the reign of the Tikbalang. Here's a very recent pop culture bias. And that's still okay. If you want your Tikbalang to be a gay celebrity, I guess it's okay. Okay.
In my
so-
game, you can probably put that.
Gay.
As a game.
Alamat na plastic. It works.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's monsters. Items.
Items. Yun. Now, in Alamat ng Astig, one of the things I'm also poking fun at is not just Filipino culture, but also the RPG culture of power gaming. So, Alamat ng Astig is encouraging you in power game, but power gaming has its price in Alamat ng Astig. To get more magic items, you have some takeaway. Kasi I forgot who, but I think it was my tito in Davao who told me na yung basyo ng bala na you wear around your neck, it repels diba, gunshots, but you should not wear it every day kasi nakabaog daw.
That's an interesting hit.
Okay.
It protects you, but it also makes you barren.
I mean, isn't that a good thing sa panahon ngayon?
No. That's like a very, very good condom. It depends on the circumstances of your barrenness.
So in my games, what I did was typical D&D stat na 11 to 12 is +1, like that. Kaso in-extend ko, 11 to 12 +1. 13 to 15 is +2. So increasing siya, pag nag-increase yung modifier. Kaya ako ginawa yun is because I want to give this feel na hindi lahat ng agimat gumagana. Kasi also part of it is kailangan daw matching daw kayo ng vibes ng agimat. Diba? May vibes pala yun.
And it goes back to culture, which I will discuss later.
Yeah.
Something about
And
the whole vibes thing.
And also, yung pagkakarga. Kasi di ba naubusan daw ng energy yung ating
Yeah.
So I'm adding yung pagkakarga. So one of the reasons
Oh my God, it's a
maganda
Green
yun.
Lantern.
One of the ways to do that is to place the agimat on top of a freshly buried body sa cemetery. Or akit ka sa mundok, titingin ka sa first sunlight, luluha ka, tapos sasaluhin mo yung luha mo sa anting-anting. Yun, so that I'm putting all of those because I think anting-anting
So,
naging
minsan walang load. So, dapat
you have walang
Prepaid
walang
tayo, guys.
Prepaid.
Walang line.
prepaid yung agimat, hindi siya postpaid.
Yeah. So and in my game again, it's not serious. So ang isa sa agimat doon, baluti ng pulis pang Kalawakan. Tapos after 5 uses, masisira siya. And at that point, kailangan mo na ibalik kay Shider kasi hinirang mo na nga lang, sisiraan mo. So
Kung suot mo yun, may ani ka?
okay.
That's a good question.
And so those items are in the game. Also the usual yung putik na you have to swallow to be flexible and stuff like that. Yung dila ng kidlat that will give you super speed and lightning powers. All of those makes an appearance in the game. But to keep the charging or yung idea of pagkahalga, limited lahat siya. But what I did was I looked at the standard yun to make the items. So I looked at the standard magic items and yung common complaint, it's not really magical. You know, what does a +5 longsword and what's the difference between a +5 longsword versus a broadsword that deals +5 damage? I mean, what's the difference between a magic longsword with +5 damage versus a normal longsword na medyo na matalas na may dagdag na +5. So to keep it magical, yung element ng danger, that's different. It's mechanical. You don't really feel the magic. So to put in yung element ng danger is there are 3 kinds of agimat, pang-opensa. The thing you use to strike someone, like dila ng kidlat, what else? Dila ng kidlat and puso ng rubber tree. So you're like plastic man. And so to use those, I want kasi if you make a mistake, you're gonna die. And so you have to make it you have to make the description as thick as possible. Yun, so kasi since it's powered by Apocalypse, what I did was you have to hit 12 instead of the usual 10. If you're using an agimat to attack someone, it goes
like a compendium class.
Yun, it goes to 12 agad. You have to get 12. And for the items that just gives you powers, here's one thing now you can put in your game is yung bracers of strength. Yun. It's a common game item. Just change it to mutya. Mutya is yung puso ng fruit na paano mo yung puso ng kung anong prutas. But the description of mutya is very big. But you find it in fruit trees. It's the heart of the fruit daw. Or you can find yung puso ng saging. And you can put that in your game. Just what BJ said. It's just a reskin. To keep the mood, it's up to the player na, okay, meron akong puso ng saging sa bunganga ko. Nagkasya. Sobrang lakas ko. That. So with the items, the magic items, it's as simple as looking at your DMG, Dungeon Master's Guide. What is applicable to our culture, and just reskin it and add what makes it really Filipino. The takeaway or the funny aspect. Yeah. So that's really just for magic items.
Okay, I just want to add real quick, for Filipino Arms and Armor, if you want to look for visual representations of this, you only need to go to Facebook. There is a person there or a page there called Filipino Weapons.
Yeah.
If you look at it, you can really see well preserved weapons and armor. And we use armor.
Actual pictures.
Yeah, with actual pictures.
Awesome.
Sometimes they have. Yeah, we actually wore armor. We had chainmail.
We had
Chainmail, though it's exclusive sa mga datos and it's not really made by us. We copied it from traders. Is it Chinese or?
I don't remember.
Feeling ko Scottish
parang-
na kasi.
Yeah, di ba European ang chainmail?
Yeah, probably stole it from them. The war.
Actually, even before this, if I remember my story correctly, even before the Spanish arrived, the Dutch were here first.
Yeah.
So it would have been, it's likely that the chainmail would have come from them.
And the Philippines is a melting pot kasi, so the best way kung wala talaga yung mahanap na gusto nyo, look at Malaysian, Thai, and Indonesian weapons. We essentially share the same thing.
This is actually from Dariel. Dariel, the creator of Fire Regat, once said that if you really want to look into Filipino culture, you also have to look at the neighboring countries. So you also consider
So
those
like
cultures.
chainmail bikinis.
I wouldn't know.
In Harry Potter kasi, Dariel the creator, he lives in Davao, and one of his jobs, and one of the things he does in his jobs is he goes to the actual tribe, takes pictures of their actual weapons, how they're made. It's really cool. Yun lang.
Okay.
We're on.
Our next one is character types. This is where the meat goes. Armchair type of thing. You do it in your spare time. If you want, you could submit it to publishers. Hopefully, they like your idea and it gets published. But if not, keep trying. Why don't I advise this? Number one, it's a lot of work. Lots of balancing, lots of math. Coming from a math major, it sucks. When you have to use math on your game, you're supposed to be having fun. So again, you need absolute mastery of the system, and even expert game designers mess it up. Case in point, the Samurai, or the Circle of the Moon Druid from 5th Ed.
Yeah.
And then after all that work, let's say you're really good at your math, you're really good at with the game system, you manage to pull everything together, you come up with a very awesome class. It's going to be used by one player, if you're lucky. Because the players will go for the published material 90% of the time. They will go for the fighter, they will go for the barbarian, they will go for the cleric because it's familiar. And even though you're good, they feel like this is more balanced. So, if you must tinker with mechanics, keep it small. My example here is, for 5th edition, you have your subclasses. Don't change the class. Add a new subclass. And if it fucks up, you can just instruct the player to revert back to one of the subclasses. They don't have to rebuild their character totally. Again, from 5th edition, you could have backgrounds. You could tinker with the backgrounds. That's what I do with my current game, the one campaign setting, is that I added a bunch of backgrounds for the Vatican or the Painted Warrior or the Pintado, whatever you want to call it, the Babaylan, etc., etc. So you don't really mess with the mechanics too much, but you're injecting fluff into it. That's what you want to do kasi. In 4th edition, if you're playing 4th edition, it's more on themes. Instead of creating a new build for your class, create a new theme that they can choose if they want. Okay, with that being said, again, I encourage rule creation. Most of them will not get to game tables, but it's okay. Game mastery is something that you should be proud of.
Yeah, with my character types in Lamat ng Astig, it's traditional RPG. You have the warrior, the warrior, rogue, thief, whatever you want to call it. Yung cleric, and I have a hunter kasi I'm obliged to put the hunter because it's set in a forest and parang barrio style, so parang I'm obliged to put a hunter. And like what PJ said, I use Dungeon World. Since it's powered by Apocalypse, I looked at Dungeon World, took inspiration from there, and just added what I know would make sense for this character. For example, if you're an Albulario, then you would know, then you'd automatically feel malign presence, diba? So it's in the Albulario skills, or parang it's part of the Albulario's progression. So again, just reskin. I don't really want to play around with, like what he said, don't play around with maths, with the mechanics aspect of it. Because if you look at it, the fighter, the archetypes, they're generic archetypes. Okay? That you can just take off the name, put it in a different name, maybe edit some of the skills, but as a whole, it can work. It can still work. I mean, creating a new class a completely new class, completely new mechanics, that would be nice for making your own game na start from scratch like your mechanics. But we both suggest reskin. I ran this game, 2-3 games. It's a Dungeons and Dragons clone, Tombs and Terror. Tinagal ko, naging kabaong at kalaban. And it worked. Yung fighter naging mandirigma. I mean, what's the difference, diba? A fighter is a mandirigma. Yun. So just a reset.
Next time. Do you have questions on character types? Oh.
And the next is
making your own games. Okay. When you want to start from scratch, you're starting with your gaming group so let's do something Pinoy. What are the possibilities? There's a lot, actually. Let's start with urban fantasy. Urban fantasy, when you want inspiration for urban fantasy, I suggest you go to comics.
13.
13. Andong Agimat, Sky World.
History.
History, mythology.
Mythology.
Class. All of those, they really work in and having this, you're from the present world but something is different.
And I think Toby got green light from Budgetan.
Yeah, but that's totally informal. No?
Hindi pa siya. NDA.
Yeah, I'll just be converting the rest of characters to Fate Accelerated.
Work in progress.
Good. Nice.
Although there already supposedly are stats for Megs, for DC Heroes MEGS system.
Yeah, I think Adam Fuqua already
Yeah.
did some for 13. I seem to remember unofficial.
Inside story, there's supposed to be an RPG, but it didn't pan out. I can't say names.
Okay. NDA. Urban fantasy, pop culture also likes to dabble in this. With your teleseries, with your...
Yeah, don't forget teleseries. Diba, you have... Oh.
Pero with
Actually, pwede rin yun. Diba? Like a Fairy Mo, Immortal.
To some extent, Shake Rattle and
Okay,
Roll.
Yeah.
Movies.
Yeah, again, the trick is to look beyond your elitist this day, and then look at the genre, and you actually see gems. A lot of them are well researched. It's just that executive meddling exists, that they add things that are reminiscent of
And
foreign-
celebrity meddling.
Yeah, celebrity meddling. They want to.
I can't do that scene. Rewriting.
No budget, so we're not doing that.
So pop culture likes to dabble. So like Pedro Peduco, Juan de la Cruz was a recent one, or anything with Gardo Versosa in it.
Hello.
Seriously. Gardo Versosa is Pinoy fantasy personified.
And both meanings of the word fantasy.
Yung mga first movies niya.
Kahit yung mga normal niyang telenovela na wala naman talagang fantasy, pag naka-topless siya, he's fantasy personified.
Pinoy fantasy, no?
Yung Gato Verso sa source book.
Oo. Project ko yan this year. System agnostic.
Ang super urban fantasy.
Chicks Garden Versus.
Autograph. What are you playing? I'm Gardo, bro. I'm a level 30 Gardo.
Ako skills mo, show off, pose.
Your name is skills mo in different movies.
The machete.
For urban fantasy, one of the best ways if you want to stray away from comic books or movies is to look at the streets and what you can add. Look at what you can add some supernatural element. Yung mga nagbebenta ng sampagita, is what if kaya, hindi talaga sampagita yun. Paano nakuha nila sa supernatural source yung sampagita yun? And when you put it inside your car, you put it anywhere, parang nagiging siya, GPS siya sa bahay mo. They know what's inside. Kaya makakita ka ng bahay. So don't buy.
Or you look at something that's already borderline supernatural.
Yeah.
You go to Quiapo, the praying ladies.
We skipped Quiapo, kanina pa tayo nag-ano dito. Best resource for stuff like this, go to Quiapo. Pag
Quiapo
uwi mo,
TV.
Yeah.
pag uwi mo may mga nagpo-form na sa isip.
Or the hold up ka.
Kasi huwag ka magdadala ng magandang cellphone doon. Okay,
Wandering Man.
next one is Pinoy action movie. Alright.
As-
Pinoy action movie, all the guns, explosions, and political incorrectness.
And
of it.
one last.
FPJ.
And yung one line.
There's a lot of interesting tropes here, like all Asians can do martial arts. Yeah. The finale is always in a rock quarry o kaya warehouse.
You don't run out of bullets.
Bad guys
Then,
always.
you run out of bullets, tapos may magbabatos ka.
And
All
you
bad
have-
guys drive.
It's a lot.
And you have enough time to backflip, pose, smile at the camera, and slow-mo get the gun.
Yeah.
Laging late
And then
yung
yung police. Huli-huli pa natin.
Sabay yung baril na PJ, ilang bala lang yung kasya pero
Hinaharap.
unlimited.
Shotgun mo, effective range, 50 feet.
Okay.
Yun din.
Something for Pinoy action movies that's not exactly part of urban fantasy because I call it rural fantasy is Julio Valiente. Look at Julio Valiente.
Julio Valiente.
I should watch that. It's an
Yeah,
awesome movie.
it's Pinoy action hero Kasi capital Pinoy action hero talaga.
There's this one time where Julio Valiente was chasing a bunch of bad guys. Two of them were running away. He only had one bullet left in his revolver. What he did, he took out his knife. Bang! Bang! Got both of them.
Di wala yun, meron pang scene, there's two guys shooting a gun at him, tapos may tuwig sa paa niya. Sinipa niya yung tuwig, tumama dun sa isang baril, tapos naputok dito.
Critical.
The best of the best.
Natural 20 lahat ng ginagawa.
Tapos hindi, meron pa dun, tinulak siya sa may cliff sa quarry. Nakailang flip pa siya nun, tapos kasi taas ko lang pala yung quarry.
Other tropes, mag-usap sa likod ng poste, break for the final shootout.
Ayun, actually with that, what I did sa lamas,
Tatuloy na kita sa pintuan ng impyerno! Lumabas ka na dyan!
o tapos isasagot mo, itutulak natin sa pintuan ng impyerno! At mamahalin ko ang asawa mo! Gagawin ko ang asawa mo! Mamahalin ako ng anak mo! Stuff like that.
Ako tatay yung ama nila! Pag wala ka na!
And in Alamat Nastig, what I did was, if you do that in game, you get more points, you get more powerful.
Kasi astig ka.
Kasi astig ka. And if you make the table laugh by doing that, more points.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's a game, all in all. You're there to have fun.
Have fun.
Okay.
Thank you for doing that in front of the camera.
Evidence! Evidence! Okay, pre-Hispanic fantasy. A little bit more serious. With pre-Hispanic fantasy, one problem here is that outside the mountain regions, many traditions have been superseded by our colonial powers. So there's a lot of things that have been suppressed. But it's still there. If you want to look at it, I suggest you look at culture. If we don't have time for culture later on. But it's one of the things that I want to discuss. Okay.
With pre-Hispanic fantasy, kasi Mark or Debian is not here. Pero with pre-Hispanic fantasy, this is where Harry Ragat shines talaga. Because Dariel works near, and he often works with, the actual ethnic people. He gets first-hand information from them, and he has done his research for a long time now. So it's what you can appreciate talaga in Harry Ragat is that it's not D&D. It's not any kind of game. It can probably be a Swords and Sorcery game. So the thing with this is, if you've ever read Filipino epics, how Filipino epics go, that's how Harry Ragat plays like.
Matamagka searches for the Tide with the Wind, or in Philippine speculative fiction, one thing that I want you guys to look at that feels epic is the Sugilanon of Epifania's Heartbreak. Very epic in feel, and you could feel that the character's level 20 plus.
Brave heart.
Pero in the end, she's just a teenager. That's one of the nice juxtapositions of Filipino epics. They're usually very young, but very epic.
And trapped sa oh wait, that's pre-Hispanic talaga.
It has a pre-Hispanic feel to me. But again, it's difficult to research into these things. If you have the time, then you really want to, then okay. But if you can't, my suggestion to capture the feel is to use cultural tropes that are existing today, which I will discuss later on.
Or manghiram ka ng libro.
And then finally, we have historical fantasy. Let's try to speed it up.
Yeah, historical fantasy. Justin should do this instead of us. Kasi I've never dabbled in historical fantasy. I think it's fun, but I'm not really the best person.
Well, what I can say about that is usually it's trivial to present it in a colonizer, oppressive colonizer, downtrodden Indio, that kind of trope. The Resolvers, for example. You could use the Resolvers and focus on that plight. But that's very Pinoy. But a challenge that I want you to look at is to make the colonizers an element that is powerful, but is not necessarily the antagonist. Case in point, this is actually not Filipino, but it's an example, Jesus Christ.
The Romans.
Yes. In the Bible, the Romans are there, they're the oppressive colonizers, but they are not the antagonists. I mean, Pontius Pilate was a dick, but ultimately it's Jesus versus organized religion, if you look at the story. So, again, although it's written this way because they needed to appeal to Roman Catholics.
And with historical fantasy, this is an afterthought. Is if you want historical fantasy with fantasy prominent, look at uprisings from the 16th to 8th to 9th, early 19th century, Tamdot uprising, Just Buhawi, we have tons of revolutions na it's really nice to play around with. Yun, there's this part na Just Buhawi, I forgot yung katalo ni Just Buhawi. He called upon the powers of Just Buhawi and they apparently won. Yun.
It's
And
stretching
nice
this definition of historical fantasy, but
right, it happened talaga. It's in history.
do you know that this is a tangential in the Katipunan? When they were establishing the Katipunan, we did not have a word for liberty. But the Masons of the Katipunan were thinking of how are we going to express liberty to the common people, and they couldn't think of anything until eventually they thought of layaw. Kapag ikaw ay nakisalayaw, the idea is you do what you want.
You're free.
You're free. Although there's no notion of being free, but they used that and then they merged it with the typical mother type of character. So we had someone called Inang Kalayaan. So there were some texts written by, I'm not sure if it's Mabini or some other Katipunero, wherein he's talking about this downtrodden Indio, and Inang Kalayaan speaks to him. Why have you forgotten me? Stuff like that.
Sa topic naman ng freedom, kasi freedom is one good topic in pre-Hispanic or even historical fantasy. One thing to look at is the people of the Cordillera regions. They really have no concept of slavery. If whenever they raid, they don't take slaves. They just take your head. That's it. So it's a fun idea.
That's a good thing. It's a good thing.
And so that's a good idea to play with.
But again, going back to Inang Kalayaan, what's interesting about her was that she's presented as some kind of diwata. So the Filipinos of the time were able to identify with her, and Inang Kalayaan has penetrated our psyche in such a way, it's in such a complete way that when the EDSA revolution happened, there's the story of Inang Kalayaan walking around, dancing around and putting flowers on the tanks. And then the tanks just can't shoot even though they're being ordered by Marcos. Sounds like total bullshit, but
It works.
it works. And if you look at the EDSA monument, it doesn't look like Mother Mary. It looks like Inang Kalayaan. So
It's just big lang talaga.
okay. Where do you get ideas? So this one's really quick. Okay,
For books.
if you're into research, we have a bunch of books here.
Dinala mo lahat ng pinahiram namin.
Hindi mo lahat. First and foremost, for Philippine pre-colonial fantasy, I suggest Barangay by William Henry Scott. It's very
Although
good.
it's hard to find those, so maybe you
Ateneos. You'll find it.
Ateneos they have.
And then, this is a recent find. This is Culture and History by Nick Joaquin. Very, very interesting. I'm still on the first few pages, but I think it's going to be nice. Again, what I'm saying here is one way to capture your history is to look at your culture. And actually, I guess dito ko na rin i-enter yung cultural tropes ko. One thing about Filipino culture that you should look at is our concepts of how we interact with each other. Other Asian campaign settings have honor. We have something like that, but you don't call it honor. It's called we call it utang na loob,
And
basically.
it's not even really that.
Oh.
It's hard to ano kasi.
But basically, utang na loob is reciprocity. That's one. You do things for people, and the expectation is that they will pay you back at some point when you need it. It's a very informal thing, but it's also an expectation in our culture. And then we have pakikisama. Even if you don't like the person, when you see the person, you offer them food.
Yeah, and yung concept of pakikisama, you can put that in your game. You can say, okay, the village you went to is now celebrating by doing a massive orgy. Yun. Do you join or not?
If you don't join, you get in trouble.
Yeah. But if you join, you're still in trouble. So
It depends if you've been wearing your agimat for a long time. And then Another interesting thing that you could see in our culture is the concept of hiya. We don't like to talk about sexuality, so we talk about it a lot. That's my basic definition of hiya. We don't like to talk about it, so we talk about it every time. That's why the 50 Shades of Grey is interestingly popular with the religious type. For example, I'm generalizing. If you're religious, World camera.
Nahuli yung disclaimer.
Ikakat out ni Fabs yung
disclaimer.
But yeah, those things, you put it into even pre-colonial settings, it will still feel Filipino.
So bayanihan.
Bayanihan.
Oh, that's one thing to abuse sa heroic games is, kasi sometimes players sabi na, sometimes they have this thing, ano makukuha ko dyan, or is it, is that encounter worth it? They have that. With Bayanihan, you're essentially not really forcing them, but the game is forcing them because that's the mood of the game. They should help anyone and everyone they see.
And I'm not sure if you've encountered, if you've personally encountered yung hindi ka nakisama, tapos they already think you're a bad person. Just because hindi ka nakikisama. It's really a Filipino culture thing that exists to this day.
Parang hindi ka lang kumain ng in-offers pa, ay maarte yung si ganyan, di ba?
Or pag sweldo mo una, hindi ka nang libre, masama ka ng tao.
We're your friend. Even if you gotta do it.
Another one that I got from Phil is trading and feasting. This is also for pre-colonial Philippines. This looks at how the kadatuhan system worked. In a nutshell, what I can say about the kadatuhan is that they are basically pageantry nobility. They want to show off. They need to, pinatay ni ganyan yung kapatid mo, tara, sugurin natin! Ganyan. That's how the datos of before worked. And if you look into it, it actually also gives you a window to how things are happening in the society right now. Because even now, that's how our politicians work.
Yeah. We're essentially still pagans, diba? Just a different skin.
They're all Versailles.
Yes, and that's why showbiz and politics in our culture is intertwined. And at the same time, you also learn to understand the whole it goes back to reciprocity or vengeance. It's part of the culture that if you are slighted, your leader will actually stand up for you to the point that they will massacre the family of the people who slighted.
Yeah, common theme in Filipino epics. Nakanti mo lang si ganito ng tribong ganyan, lahat sila susugod papatayin lahat ng kilala mo. Inusan lahi, yeah.
Pero, it happens a lot. But then, they decide to ally themselves with each other, intermarry, and then there's going to be a lot of fiestas, feasting.
It happens today.
It happens to this day. If in doubt, mamigay ng cake.
Dala ng donut.
Guys, the donut is free.
For other books, a good thing to look, a good way to look for good books then is to go sa local colleges na
University presses.
University presses. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, giraffe books. Yun yung maliliit na libro sa mga book sale. The price is from 10 pesos to 25 pesos. They print dissertations and thesis. Yes, and yung mga works na yun, really from people like the students from Bicol, from Davao. So you get the legit thing, and okay, medyo sketchy minsan yung grammar, minsan hindi maganda yung dissertation. Yeah,
Bakit
dissertation
footnote ng
na talaga.
Wikipedia?
But I mean, for 10 pesos to 25 pesos, it's a good deal. Tapos just recently, nakakuha kami ng email na list of Indarapatra variations. And I don't think I'd ever find that again. Kaya binili ko na agad for 15 pesos. Diba? The next is...
Alright, other ideas. Again, you go back to television. You discard your disdain for the mainstream and look at what you can find. So Aswang Chronicles is one. It's recent. It's very well researched. From someone who's also done Aswang research as well, I can say that it's very well researched.
The mood of my game is similar to Aswang Chronicles.
In particular, his mood is very close to Kubot. Tik is a little bit more serious. Kubot has a lot more fun stuff in it. But it also has it's the first time I saw the Malakat in the as an Aswang in popular culture, and I'm very impressed with that. The Malakat is a Aswang that has prehensile hair, and then traditionally it uses its hair to grapple you, and then it will suffocate you by putting the hair inside your throat until you die. That's so interesting. Dito, they just have prehensile hair and then they suck you like normal swan. But that's okay. And then you have Amaya.
Speaking from experience. I would say this.
And then you have Amaya. You watch Amaya. To go back to my earlier point, Amaya has Gardo Versosa. Gardo Versosa there is Ra'a Mangubat. He can kill you with a finger.
It's a good move. It's a good movie already.
Umangat na agad yun.
And then he mentions that
tolerableness.
in episode 1, they mention how he can kill with a finger, and then he kills someone with a finger, and then they never do it again. Until the time when Gardo Versosa's character was already starting to become good, and he's starting to realize that the token female kontrabida is manipulating her. She goes, and then the girl just suddenly loses her shit. So it's a Gardo Versosa, man. He's fantastic.
Also, check out like yung na 80s, 90s, maybe even 70s Filipino fantasy films. But the more recent ones, Pedro Penduko, I have to say, is one of the best.
Johnny Gibbs.
Yeah, John Reeves. Return of the Comeback. Rushed pa rin yung plot, pero the way they carry it kasi it's tolerable and it's funny. Yun. And it also has the tropes na very comedic yung bida na often breaks the fourth wall, is generally a bumbling fool who for some reason can fight, muscular fighters. And everyone here has probably watched Magic Temple. Yun.
No one wants that.
No one wants
Okay,
it.
Fabs, I have watched Magic.
Pero if you have not watched Magic Temple, bakit?
Kasi
Magic
90s
be there.
90s.
The first, especially watch the first Magic Temple. It's Pika-Gayaga, so you can expect na it's nicely done.
Okay.
It's really nice. It's not really heavy Filipino fantasy, pero it's a fantasy world talaga with taste of Filipino-ness. And that's what I like it. Kasi when you say Filipino fantasy, okay, may tikbalang agad, okay, may asong agad. Why not just make your own fantasy world and just inject Filipino stuff? That's Magic Temple.
And that's really what you want to do in
Yeah.
when you are playing D&D. Unless you're really as crazy as I am and you want to make it really Filipino all throughout. It's better to and do the math. It's better to just incorporate elements into the game that's already familiar to you. Well, for one thing, it doesn't alienate your players. Introducing too much Filipino stuff can alienate you. What else? I think that's it.
Yeah. Oh, do we have any?
Okay, that's our talk. And if you have questions, I guess we can have a few
Yeah, a
minutes.
few
for it.
minutes. If anyone has questions.
Face up guard of resources.
Dali, dali.
Google no, pero nakalist talaga sa phone.
DJ Baka pala yung pictures ni Guard.
Especially Machete. And Machete 2? Machete 2 is better than Machete 1.
In what way? It's big.
I have a question.
Okay.
In your opinion, would it be better to start off a newbie group? For example, you're the GM now. Start a newbie group with a Filipino, totally Filipino-made game, or would you want them to experience the basic Dwarven Fighter, the Cleric, the Wizard,
when they're newbies.
I have an answer to that.
Oh yeah.
If you are, kasi how I mostly play with people who grew up in the computer generation. I play with teenagers a lot, and the best way to you have the basic fighter rogue kasi we're already familiar with that because of computer games. Pero yung tropes ng D&D is too deep for them to actually appreciate or understand. So just get the basic archetypes and put the skin of Filipinos. Okay, there's a tikbalang, and once they see that, okay, familiarized, they know what to do na agad. So come up with an easy hybrid. That's the best way sa akin.
For me, with newbies, this is less related to this and more related to how I run my games. Is that I get to know them first, and then mostly kapaan. Not in a literal way.
Teenagers!
But basically, you try to figure out what you want, and then if you think that if I can see that the Filipino elements appeal to them,
Right.
then I will add it.
I guess it depends upon your group talaga.
Yeah.
And another example here is, it's not a newbie group, but when I ran my Dungeon World game, my first Dungeon World game, I introduced some Filipino elements. I didn't really introduce a lot, but I introduced some. And then I looked at the players, and because this is Dungeon World, I looked at what they will do from there. And then because it's kind of a collaborative effort with that particular system, right? And then when I gave the ball to them, they started creating this. Dapat may rice terraces dito. Tapos the rice terraces have elves in them because these mountain people are elves.
Na nakamahal.
So it worked. It worked out in the end. And then since the ball was on them, although I planted initial Filipino seed, there were a lot of Western elements, but there were also a lot of Filipino elements that came from the players themselves. So it really depends on the players.
So parang just know the general mood of your players. If they're experienced gamers, I think introducing them head on is it's viable and it's doable.
With experienced players,
Yeah,
you
with
could pitch it.
experience, there's no problem.
But I guess with newbies, you have to come up with a way for them first to understand how the game goes,
Yeah.
diba? And the trope, the culture of the game. So parang just make them learn how the culture of playing is.
My one idea, final word on that, is that instead of adding a dwarf fighter, add a gnome and call him a nuno, and then let's see what they do with it. And then if they run with it, if they run with the trope, and then you notice them expecting Filipino elements, then that's when you add more.
Yeah.
So there.
You were saying?
I'm gonna add my perspective on this. Like you said earlier, it's yung mga seeds ang magandang ilagay. And parang when it comes to newbies kasi, their first concern is this what they're playing in the first place. They don't even know what they're playing in.
Mm-hmm.
So with the use of seeds, like introduce the nomas, parang you can say that itong gnome na to para tong nuno, or itong dwarf duwende siya.
Mm-hmm.
So they already have a picture, and then you can either stretch it and let them take the reins, and then say, instead of saying, oh, these dwarves ganito yung culture nila, they always have this. No, instead of saying that, let them define it. It would be more engaging for them. It would be more fun for them, and it would give you the chance to gauge if they want to use Western or Filipino elements.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. That's that.
Alright, so that concludes for the first panel. The second panel will,
Sorry, OT kami kagad.
yeah. First panel will start in about maybe 10 minutes.
Like a break.
That's just for that. Thank you.
Donuts for everyone.